So this is Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson admitting CIA operations against China. I have seen this video, coincidentally, and if you have not seen this video, you're going to find it very interesting. Depressed Elephant, watch this.
The one I spent 31 years in the military. Here is what it has decided for Afghanistan. I bet you don't know this either. We're in Afghanistan as we were in Germany post-World War II. That is for at least a half a century. It has nothing to do with Kabul and state building, nothing to do with fighting the Taliban or proving that we can reconcile with the Taliban, and nothing to do with fighting any terrorist group, because it is the only hard power the United States has that sits proximate to the Central Base Road Initiative of China that runs across Central Asia.
So the CIA, or a colonel within the American military, is admitting that the U.S. involvement in Afghanistan was largely because it was the closest region to China. And you see the U.S. cozying up to Australia and India more, as opposed to the traditional NATO countries like Germany and France. It's now the U.S., the UK, Australia, and India are teaming up, and they've formed this military alliance called AUKUS. That India is not part of AUKUS, but they are part of the U.S.'s larger strategy to threaten China. And the U.S. is just cozying up to all their allies who are geographically close to China, so they can launch destabilization efforts into China. And that is why it's so important that the U.S. control Afghanistan. And like we said, the U.S.'s funding and arming of the Mujahideen, Osama bin Laden's right-wing extremist group, then went on to fund and arm the ETIM, the East Turkestan Islamic Movement, which is a separatist movement in Xinjiang, China. So the U.S.'s efforts in destabilizing Afghanistan and their effort to build socialism directly hurt and help destabilize China. So that's just one example of how the U.S. can destabilize China through Afghanistan.
We had to impact that with military power. We are in position to do so in Afghanistan. And second reason we're there is because we're cheek and jowl with the potentially most unstable nuclear stockpile on the face of the earth in Pakistan. We want to be able to leap on that stockpile and stabilize it if necessary. And the third reason we're there,
got to be able to threaten Pakistan too,
is because there are 20 million Uyghurs, and they don't like Han Chinese in Xinjiang province in western China. And if the CIA has to mount an operation using those Uyghurs, as Erdogan has done in Turkey against Assad, there are 20,000 of them in Idlib in Syria right now, for example. That's why the Chinese might be deploying military forces to Syria in the very near future to take care of those Uyghurs that Erdogan invited in. Well, the CIA would want to destabilize China, and that would be the best way to do it.
So there you have it. They just admitted it openly, out loud. They said that the best way to destabilize China would be to propagate ethnic conflict between the Uyghur people and the Han Chinese. So the U.S. took the ETIM, the East Turkestan Islamic Movement, off their list of terrorist groups, as allowing them to increase recruiting and increase their presence in China, which was followed by a series of horrific terrorist attacks like the Urumqi massacres that we talked about earlier, which killed, I believe, 120 to 140 people, and there were people running around with severed heads in the streets like we were talking about. This is what the U.S. has been propagating in China. And then when China has cracked down on this and done anti-terrorist efforts in Xinjiang to try and defend themselves from U.S. intervention and U.S. imperialism, that's when the U.S. started accusing them of doing a genocide, and they accused China of suppressing the Uyghur people. So it's really a brilliant strategy if you're trying to control the public narrative to make people hate China, and you're trying to destabilize China. Dump a bunch of arms and funding into this right-wing extremist group to try and create ethnic conflict or religious and ethnic conflict, and then when that conflict breaks out that you propagated and China does something to try and stop it, you accuse them of doing genocide. You accuse them of being the authoritarian ones.
To foment unrest and to join with those Uyghurs in pushing the Han Chinese and Beijing from internal places rather than external.
Internal rather than external. They're trying to destabilize the country from the inside out. Because why would the U.S. just leave China alone and try and raise Americans out of poverty? It's not like 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and 60,000 of us die every year because we don't have access to basic health insurance. Or it's not like we have a student debt crisis in this country. It's not like we don't have clean drinking water in the South or in Flint, Michigan. Why would we spend our effort and resources on any of those things when we could be funding right-wing terrorist groups in China? Isn't that such a better use of our tax dollars? Insane. Download the video before it gets taken down. Good point. Because that video basically exposes everything the U.S. has been doing in Xinjiang. So that's why that video gets taken down, anytime it gets uploaded. You think the metaverse, you think Zuckerberg's going to allow that video to go viral? No